I might throw the first curveball in here, if that's
Go for
okay.
it. Sure.
I
But I just feel like skill can be taught, attitude can't. I hire that as like priority one and skill as priority two.
I look for somebody who doesn't say the things that they want me to hear, but they just do the things that they know that I want to see.
But if you're doing well and all of a sudden your numbers start to slip, there's this like stages of grief almost. And then you're like in your head so much, like I got to do all these things different and I'm not performing.
When you're in that rut, it's like you need outside help, in my opinion. There's a saying, when you're in the bottle, you can't read the label.
I refrain from good, bad, right, wrong, correct, false, A player, B player, because otherwise we're trying to speak a truth into existence that is not there.
Open to the floor. What do you guys look for when someone reaches out when you've got a role that you're trying to fill? Who stands out? Who doesn't stand out? What do you say when people say they're interested? Interested in what?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Can I have more info? What info would you like? Personally, I look for, like, for the most part, attitude over skill. I don't, like, I'm not looking for like green. I'm looking for, have you got like a reasonable foundation? But I just feel like skill can be taught, attitude can't. So I hire that as like priority one and skill as priority two.
How do you determine attitude? What's a good attitude when you see it?
I feel like I guess a lot of that maybe comes down to intuition a little bit now, having spoken with so many reps and maybe made the wrong hire. Yeah, but a lot of it's in their language, I would say.
As in the first touch point with you, maybe? Like via
Yeah,
DM? Or...
potentially. Or like maybe an intro video or what they say they're looking for. I can get a vibe pretty quick on like maybe what type of person they are. And if I'm really on the fence, I might jump on a quick call, but I generally don't have to. Yeah. And then I just kind of, if I have that suspicion where I'm like, I just stress test it like with kind of more questions. But that's for me. That's me.
For me, it's like, it's doing and not just saying. Like, if, as a example, if somebody says, I don't, want to waste your time, and then goes on to record like a 5-minute voice note, like I'm not, like they're saying one thing, but then they're doing another thing. Or even if they just say the thing and don't just do it instead, right? That is also just as much of an offense, if you will, in my eyes. I look for somebody who doesn't like say the things that they want me to hear, but they just do the things that they know that I want to see. And they just do the things rather than saying them. I think it's kind of maybe a weird distinction, but that's definitely one that I look for a lot.
I think for me, to add on two things that have not been said, which is all good. Couple things. One, is it going to be a headache to work with this person? Right? Can I see myself working with this person? Right? And another one too, is not necessarily offers or anything like that. It's like, what are the reasons they're looking for something else, and what is their background as far as like changing offers and the reasons for those? Like if they've been on offers that I know that were good and things like that, and now they're externalizing the responsibility. Like if I hire you and I put time into you, I don't want you to churn in 30, 60 days, So like that would be another one. Like, and like any reps that worked with me, I have no one that left like actually teams, and I'm happy for that. Like I've let some people go, which is okay. But so that's big, because if I put time, energy, we have it all in one-on-ones, I review some of your calls and everything, like you're an asset, right? And I'm going to invest into you, but it's like, don't quit on us after 30, 60 days. That's why I'm very upfront when I hire about what is the role, what people have made, what is possible here, what's the current reality, so that like, hey, if you sign up for this, and if you don't want to, then don't jump in. Like let's not start it, basically. So
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's cool when that you have people. I mean, the offer hopping thing is a very real thing, but the reasons why they've moved into different places.
And I know I've been closing for like 3 years, so I know what is a valid reason. And like, for example, the big situation with Legendary Marketer, like, and there's been a couple people that applied for roles and that were on there. So I know the reality and I know it's a real thing. Like the calendar is empty and like all those things. So like, again, it's like I've been in your shoes, so I know what is a good reason and not. So
versus just like getting on the offer and not making 20K in the first week and looking for something else.
Yep.
Yeah.
No, I definitely agree with that. Just a thought on when you are hiring, obviously, like most of the hires that we would do on Facebook, maybe DM referral, whatever it is. How much does someone's social presence make a difference for you guys?
For me, not a lot. However, if their social presence is really terrible, yes, it will. So I don't mind if they're not like really active and social, but if I check out their profile and terrible profile pic, like terrible, they're tagged in weird things. They're like, I can see, old posts or just, I suppose, things that aren't necessarily conducive to like a sales professional. That will influence my decision. However, if someone has like a clean profile, they're just not like necessarily overly active, I don't look at that particularly negative.
So then it's almost like you either post some decent stuff or you don't post at all.
Yeah. Honestly.
That's
which is kind of how I feel sometimes.
Yeah.
The opinions, like somebody who's super opinionated, they're usually really difficult to work with. I don't really care like what your opinion is either way, but if your entire profile is like hardcore political opinions or controversial topics or whatever, I'm like, you're going to be a pain because somebody else on the team isn't going to agree with you. You're not going to get along with somebody else in leadership at some point, and that's going to be like a problem. You can't sell to all clients equally if you're really that strongly engraved in your opinions,
I might throw the first curveball in here, if that's okay. I I have a couple people on my team who are some of the best that I've ever seen at what they do in terms of both setting and closing. And two people that I'm thinking of in particular, one of them, his social presence has all been him like going to concerts and hanging out with friends and like debauchery type stuff. Like, with all the love in the world. He's not necessarily the type of person that I would hang out on a day-to-day basis with, but he's incredible at what he does, and he's still consistent, like despite it. And so, in terms of like seeing a certain thing on social media or not seeing it, or what was it exactly that you said, Angie? It wasn't consistency, but it was like,
like really opinionated or speaking in absolutes. Yeah,
I'm honestly okay with somebody who is opinionated. Like another very good performer on my team is very opinionated. What I've found is really the top A players in sales that I've seen are usually more opinionated than B players and C players. And I come in with the expectation that an A player is probably going to have a little bit of a overconfidence issue. It's probably going to have a little bit more ego. It's probably going to have opinions because of that or in accordance with that. And that's just something that I expect and am ready for and build the team just with that in mind, right? Because like at the end of the day, I know it can be difficult to work with them. A players are usually the toughest people to work with, in my opinion, but it pays off.
Yeah. I mean, if they're Tom Brady, do what you want. Like, I'm willing. There's always exceptions to a rule, and if like you are genuinely really, really, really good, then cool. But the reality is, like 90% of people in my inbox, they think they're Tom Brady. They're very much not. And then you add all the other things. It's just like, yeah. But like, yeah, to your point, I'm willing to take some of that if you do what you need to do. Number one,
Yeah. And usually with those types of people, sorry, Adam, game respects game. So like if they see that you're good too, then they respect that, and it's a little bit easier. But if you as a manager are shit too, then like A players will probably never join your team, or they'll walk all over you.
I think a lot of the difficulty comes in that we have to form an opinion on whether this person is going to be a good fit, and how do we do that without becoming judgmental, without becoming without generalizing, without eliminating, without obscuring what we're looking for. And so the best filters that I've had so far for hiring, the first one I look for is just self-responsibility. It's funny, I was just asked this on a podcast this morning. Self-responsibility. Does this person take responsibility in their language, when they explain what they've done, who they are, where they've been, what they've achieved, what they've not achieved? Do they take extreme responsibility for all of it? If there's more blaming or scapegoating than there is, I did this, I failed to do this, it wasn't in alignment with me, except if it's all a me-based conversation, I'm very willing to listen to it and open to working with this person. The second filter that I run them through is, do they share similar values with the company? And so if company value number one is, speed, everything's got to move fast, and this person is very methodical, very exact, very accurate, they may be a great fit for an offer that needs that level of accuracy of attention to detail. And this may be more fast-paced environment that there's going to be a clash of values. The last filter, and this has been the best filter that I've known so far, that's helped me tremendously with these things, and it comes from EOS Worldwide, from Gina Wickman, is GWC. Do they get it? Do they want it? Can they do it? Do they get it? Do they really deeply understand and get what it is to be a good, solid sales professional? In that category falls something like self-responsibility, in my opinion. Do they want it? Do they really want to get up every morning and be selling this thing? Do they want to be a part of this environment, this culture, this company? And can they do it? Do they have that's the last one. Do they have the skill, the capability, the time? Do they have the means? All of the sort of logistical things fall under can. And so the first thing, self-responsibility, is just a very quick check mark for me. If I'm not sensing it and I don't see it, we won't get along.
What do you ask? What do you ask to ascertain, I guess, self-responsibility? One I can think of is, maybe what's causing you to move on from your other offer, because they will either kind of take ownership in some way, or they'll blame the offer. How do you run them through that filter?
Yeah, nothing in particular, funny enough. I'm just looking for it in all of their language patterns. So that is a good one, especially what have you sold so far? Which was your favorite offer to sell on? Why that one? What were your results there? All of these past performance and how we got to this conversation, it'll be an external or an internal conversation. It'll be company, lead, team, manager, leadership, marketing, life, health, son, God, whatever. Or it'll be me. I did this because I was great, or I did this because I fucked that up. And that's completely fine. Either way, I just want an internal conversation. So I don't ask for anything particular, but I'm just listening for it in their language.
If I can jump in there real quick, just quick little, it's called locus of control if you look it up in psychology. One question that I ask on this on all of my applications, it's the last question. I'm going to give away some of my sauce here. I got to come up with another one now. But how does someone get the flu? I just ask that at the end of every application. I say, this is not a trick question. Just answer it. And someone will either say, I got close to somebody who had the flu, or I didn't wash my hands, or, internal sort of locus of control things. I did something, or I didn't do something that I needed to do. Or they'll say, somebody else who had the flu was near me and, they sneezed or they coughed or whatever. And all of the locus of control is on external forces. It's on other people. So that's a question that I use. I learned that from Chase Hughes on how to ask that question. So I've used it in every single application.
That's smart, but you're right. Great. Now you need a different question, because anybody who watches this knows the right way to answer it.
How does someone catch a COVID?
Yeah, exactly.
Christian, I want to come back to what you said and challenge you a little bit on this, because I think that it is a really common belief right now in sales, and it's really popular in the bubble that we exist in. that for somebody to be an A player, that they have to be loud or fit a box of like a typical sales persona. And I've been in sales for 10 or 15 years. And of the people that I've been around who've been the A players, a lot of times it's not the loudest person in the room. And it's not the one with that typical sales personality. I've seen a lot of people do a lot of bragging about the things they've done. And those are rarely, in my opinion, the people who are actually the true A players on the team. So just for the people watching, I think there are a lot of people who, they ask questions like, how do you have success? How do you talk about your success without bragging? And they're embarrassed. Like they don't want to post on social media. They don't want to be loud and opinionated. So saving space for the people who also are A players, but you'll never see them, calling their mama to brag about it kind of thing.
Good point. I guess I've got a follow on from that in terms of like A players. How does somebody get an A player status? Because some A players are self-proclaimed A players, in my opinion. When if I was judging them, they would be B or C at best. So how does somebody have that? Not from themselves, again, not self-proclaimed, but how would you consider someone to be an A player?
I feel like at the end of the day, there's always going to be an element of subjectivity.
Like, is it results? Can you narrow it down to, hey, this person's results orientated, and they just have that it factor? How do you what are some constraints that you can put?
I think the symptoms of an A player, or I don't know if the symptoms would be the right way to say it, but it's like on a team, like everyone kind of looks up to them, they reach out to them, like when there's something they're not sure about, how do you do this, how do you do that? On the team meetings, like none of it takes space, but they'll share opinions, they'll help people out as well. Again, that's my 2 cents. And I think it's going to be kind of a title that it's kind of like a non-said in the room, that no one says it, but everyone thinks it, and everyone kind of feels the same way about the person, right? And also, again, I don't think it's necessarily just the results, but it's most of the consistency. Do they the high say-do ratio? Like they say something to do it, and then everything they do is top notch. They in terms of how they confirm their calls. Like for me, if I look A player, typically they have a really high show rate, for example, because they're really on top of their leads. And that's just ownership of whatever is in their pipeline, right? They're gonna it's just one of those things. It's those are kind of symptoms of that. In my opinion. So.
Well, it's kind of like it's the qualities and attributes that you're measuring it against that will determine if someone is an A player. It's how do they measure up against these? Because in maybe depending on the qualities and attributes you're looking for, someone might be a B player and someone else might be an A player. But if you maybe change the qualities and attributes that you're using to determine an A player, those roles could switch, in my opinion. I feel like there's probably a number of qualities and attributes we could all agree on. But yeah, it does probably come down a lot too to what you consider, what makes up an A player for what you're looking for or what you need.
Yeah.
I mean, without sounding like a Buddhist monk, I refrain from labels. I just refrain from labels. I refrain from good, bad, right, wrong, correct, false, A player, B player, because otherwise we're trying to speak a truth into existence that is not there. If it's the universal truth, if it's not a universal truth, it's a belief system or a label. And so I can choose to accept it and hold on to it and use it. That's fine. If it serves me, if not, I'll just put it over there. And this person is just a guy on my team.
Yeah, it's not a black or white. It's how high on the spectrum this person is X, Y, and Z, and then whatever attribute or qualities that you want to.
Yeah. But obviously, if we use the language A player, B player, C player, if that becomes something that's common in our teams and in our culture, then we're just creating new hierarchies that weren't there before. Whereas all we want are people that are in alignment with the values of the company, that are doing their job and fucking loving doing what they do. And that's it. That's it. And that's without sounding like a Buddhist monk, I'll just refrain from labels.
No, I love that though. It's every quality and attribute has an equal and opposite, positive and negative anyway. To your point, Adam, earlier, it's if you're looking, the really detailed oriented person might be considered a D player for the offer you're looking for. However, might be considered an A player for a different offer. And so it really just comes down to, I mean, if you were to label, like, what are the qualities and attributes that would kind of constitute an A player for like what I'm looking for, specifically.
I was just gonna say, isn't it kind of dangerous as like a leader to start thinking this is my A player, this is my B player? Because like once you define them as that, then they live up to that expectation, or you're always looking at it through the lens of like, this person's better than the rest and this person's not as good. Where I feel like true, like solid leadership gives everybody equal playing field, and you respect everybody for who they are and what they're doing and right now. And then your people that are consistent, those are your most reliable. And you're like, Bob's going to do whatever every month, no matter what happens, no matter how shitty his leads are, whatever, Bob's going to show up and he's going to find a way to make money because Bob's got to pay for shit at home. So like, those are your people that you're like, these are my like ride or dies. But, you still don't like never discount the low guy, because if you give them enough attention and you help them enough, they're going to become a good salesperson too.
For sure. That's a good point. I think if I can segue into this next topic, I think it kind of lends into it. So then you've got these people, like I said, I mean, I don't necessarily like labels either, and I can see everyone's perspective on it, like with Jacob, how you identify maybe like leaders in the team. Probably I like to call it more that. But let's say you've got, you've got this expectation of somebody, whether they're classed as, top performer, middle, bottom of the pack. Everyone goes through some rough patches in time, whether they're top, bottom, but let's say they're usually high standard performers. What are some of the levers that you think you go to determine, where maybe the performance might be lacking, and how do you help them pull themselves out of it? Or do they just do it themselves? Christian?
I have a really good one for this. Basically, what I do is I take all of the guesswork out of it and make everything as data-driven as possible. And the way that I do this specifically is have the calls reviewed in a non-biased way from a third party, in a yes-no fashion for different areas throughout the call. Did they set a frame at the beginning of the call? Did they outline what was going to happen on the call? Did they ask a very clear and concise first question? Did they get to, the root of the biggest problem that the prospect was having at the moment? Like all the way throughout the call, from start to finish, have basically VAs go through and rate this on like 1 or 0. 1, it was done. 0, it wasn't. All the way through to, objection handling. Did this objection come up? Yes or no? Was it handled? Yes or no? Did they handle all objections? Did they, thank the prospect for their time and congratulate them on moving forward today? Like everything. And then basically what's done is a score is calculated for each separate part of the call, and then a total call score. And each rep has a certain score, both for individual parts of the call as well as their calls in a whole. And you can very quickly see which reps are doing very well at which areas and which reps are doing less well. And then I also correlate that with the number of closes and deposits that they get. So I can see the rep that is getting a ton of closes and a ton of deposits, he has a much higher score at this certain part of the call. Interesting. The other closers have a lower score there. Maybe we should train the other closers on that and see what happens. And then usually, once that goes up, close rate and closes and deposits go up.
That's cool. I mean, it's assuming, I suppose, that like what Patrick described was because of skill. So I agree as well 100% on like data driven. Like I was running a training session the other day, and a sales rep had said, I feel like I'm like asking too many questions. Well, the moment I heard feel, I was like, cool. Well, what have you seen in your conversations that makes you say that? Oh, I don't know. It's just like I feel that way. And so she was looking for like a solution to that. But instead, I just helped her realize that it was a feeling and that there wasn't actually any evidence to suggest that was the case. And like there was just this sort of light bulb moment of like, oh, I can let go of that. Right. And so I try to then, kind of, lean on evidence or lean on like the data. Yeah. Could it be outside of sales as well? Like maybe it's it's like people don't get terrible at sales overnight? What's going on? Or does this trend extend across the team? Or what is it that's going on? So yeah, I always try to kind of come back to like, what does the evidence suggest? Yeah.
I mean, the framework that I use to think through that is it team or individual is the first one. So I think this conversation is based on it definitely being a fluctuation in individual performance. So the framework I'll use to think through it and even talk through it with the rep is energy and skill. And I'll actually look at energy first, because it's just, in my experience, it's more often been a change in there. And so it's just what changed. And so energy, I got to give Cole Gordon credit for this. It was a framework that I saw him use. I kind of simplified it a little bit, so just broke it down a little bit less, but look at physiology, clarity, and inspiration. Physiology is just bare bones. Like, are you sleeping? Like, honestly, sleeping, or are you on your phone until 1 o'clock in the morning? When you wake up, do you look at your phone first thing in the morning? Have you gotten into some habits that you didn't have before? Are you training? Are you eating? Are you drinking? Are you like, what's your physiological state right now, and what changed? What have you removed or added that's maybe made a difference? If nothing, clarity. Do you still understand and like really deeply connect with like why the fuck you're putting yourself through this every day in the first place? Do you remember like why you even bother doing this? Or has it fizzled out? Has it changed? Have your values changed? Your life situation changed, that this is just like, you're just not up for the fight anymore? Like, you're just not just got no clear why anymore. If we're still reconnected to the selfish and unselfish reasons, so I'll separate those in selfish and unselfish. Selfish meaning like why I'm doing this, and unselfish, why should I bother fighting for this other person on the end of the line? The last will be inspiration, and that'll be almost like diet, but for your brain. Like, what's going into your head right now? What are you reading, consuming, listening to? Who are you talking to? Are you hanging out? Like, is there a family member over visiting that's just like, just filling you with negativity? What's in your environment right now? Are you listening to the radio all of a sudden and listen to like just silly little things like this? Like, what's your inspiration? And so what are you reading? What are you learning? Are you training? Are you actually doing something to develop your mind still? If none of those are changed, and that's pretty rare, then it's got to be a skill issue. And so skill will just break down very simply into knowing what to say, knowing why you're saying it, knowing what you're hearing. Are you still, and this, I think Christian's got a phenomenal system dialed in for this, is, are you still just asking the right questions? Are you still following the framework that we know works? Cool. If you are, do you still understand deeply why you're asking these questions and what you're getting out? So therefore, are you getting the answers that you're looking for? I'm nearly done. Bear with me. The last is,
No, this is solid. This is fire.
Yeah. And the last is, do you still really understand what you're hearing? And so are there things in the responses that you're getting that you're missing, that are tripping you up? Are there indications of things that are happening down the line that you could have handled here because you're just not hearing them anymore? Those 6 things are somewhere along the path of something that's changed. And more often than not, it'll just be physiological. They've just got lazy with their health.
So.
Yeah. A mentor of mine, actually, when I was on an offer, it was like a men's health performance offer. So, they were available for a lot of that. And if I ever it felt like I was in a bit of a rut, or I was just more anxious, more stressed, like something was going on. The first question, I was always like, I've forgotten how to sell, just forgotten it, right? But his first question was always, what have you changed? What were you doing then that you're not doing now? Or what are you doing now that you weren't doing then? And to Adam's point, 99.9% of the time, it was that, I'd changed something in my diet, or I was a bit lax on my sleep routine, or I was overtraining, or, it was, most of the time it was something like that. and I would either stop doing that thing that I'd started doing or re-added what I'd stopped that was, clearly like helping, and, that would solve it. I'd remember how to sell again, so
I would say that's
yeah,
probably
I think
80%.
That's a really strong point.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's 80%.
Yeah. Like sales is just so much energy,
Go, Ange.
so much energy, so much discipline.
I agree with you, Laura, so much. Like, I kind of feel there is this cycle of somebody who was a high performer and then they slip, right? So we're not talking about somebody who's new and has never done well or whatever. You don't know if it's just not a match. But if you're doing well and all of a sudden your numbers start to slip, there's this like stages of grief almost, like stages of a sales slump that you go through. And at first you like don't identify. You're like, okay, I just didn't close them. That's fine. And then like all of a sudden the numbers are undeniable. And then you're like in your head so much, like I got to do all these things different and I'm not performing and I'm not.
It becomes like self-perpetuating. Hey.
Yeah. And so I feel like good leader can like guide you out of that. And exactly what you said, Laura. I mean, Ryan Stewman, the hardcore closer, or whatever, he has a group he posted years ago and it just like really stuck with me. I think it was like 2018 or something, that whenever he is in a slump, he always listened to the calls that he won, like he closed. And then he would go back and ask like people, like, how are things going? Like what did you enjoy about our conversation? And then it would like revive him into, oh yeah, this is the version of me that closes the deals. This is the version of me that succeeds, not this one that's desperate and scared right now that I'm not winning. And it like gets you out of that funk.
Well, like in an answer to your, I think part of the question that you'd asked us all, Patrick, it's like, is it a manager or a leader's responsibility? Is it the reps? I feel like it's both. I don't feel like the rep should get themselves out of it on their own. I don't feel like a leader or a manager should, fight to pull you out of it either. I feel like let's figure this out, together.
Two-way street.
Yeah. And I think also it's like you need, when you're in that rut, it's like you need outside help, in my opinion. Like whoever your name is, I think it helps. It's like there's a saying, when you're in the bottle, you can't read the label, right? So you can't put your finger on it. And also pulls out the emotion out of the situation, like have that third party point of view. And like it's a recurring theme that oftentimes like personal stuff affect like business stuff is just like common. But even I had a one-on-one client that like he's a rep and he was like 10 calls in a row not closing, and we hop in a one-on-one and it's like, yeah, I don't know why. It's like, I don't know the questions to ask. And I'm like, and I was on a call with him and he was not present. I'm like, hey, you're not even present. You're not even listening to what I'm telling you. Like, you feel like that could be a possibility of that happening on your calls? Like, yeah, I have so much going on in my mind. Like, dude, like, how can you like even know what questions to ask like on the call? And like, so those team is like in patterns and things like that. And just like being there for your team. And oftentimes they lose confidence when this happens, and they just need that like big brother kind of energy also, and like pump them back up as well. That I found that working well. And then also saying like, hey, go back to listen to some of your calls that you closed, things like that. Oftentimes, again, it's just kind of like a mindset thing, and they just like get in that loop and just need somebody to pull them out.
I feel like it's important then, like as leaders and managers as well, to create like a safe space for our reps. So, I'm certainly not there to be their friend, but something I make very clear is like, I'm here to see you win. My door is open. Like, I want them to feel like if they were to come to me and be really open and transparent about what's going on in their world, like I can't solve problems that I don't know about. And so, some reps, depending on their leader, their manager, like they'll keep things to themselves. They'll feel like I need to try and figure this out on my own. I don't want them to know what will they think of me, how might they perceive me differently. Whereas like I make it very clear to sort of all of my reps is that like, I will never be like angry or mad. Like I just like, I don't care. I don't judge. I just need to know. And, as long as you're willing to do that, like I'm willing to help you. And so anytime any of them kind of have that courage to just be like, I dropped the ball and like, this is why, then, I guess I'm true to my word and I'm like, cool. Like, I really appreciate you like owning that. And, I know it won't happen again. Like, cool. Here's how we can sort of like solve that.
Some of the best managers, you're reminding me of what, like, parenting 101, it's like, these are my babies. And then,
yeah, honestly, it feels like that. It's like sitting down and being like, no, I don't. And I I tell the reps as well sometimes when I'm describing like maybe a tone to use with like a particular question. It's like, I want you to, I've got a lot of like fathers that I work with. I'm like, all right, I want you to imagine that you've had a phone call from school. The teacher said, hey, like your son did this, and he gets home and, you sit down with him and you're like, mate, I don't care. I'm not going to get angry. I just need to know. And yeah, it's
And
like
as soon as
that.
they tell you, like, why the fuck did you do that? I told you not to do that shit.
That's the thing, though. They don't believe you until they see you do it.
Yeah,
You can
exactly.
They will not. It will
Yeah.
fall on deaf ears until they see you actually do it.
Yes.
That's the.
But how annoying is it to meet with somebody who is like clearly struggling, and the entire meeting is about why everything that is not to do with them is to blame. It's the leads, even though everybody else is still performing. It's the, times of my calls. It's my schedule. It's this, it's that. It's everything besides them. I will like run a marathon for somebody who takes ownership. For the people that don't, I'm like, suffer. Let's watch.
I try to avoid them, like, I mean, sometimes we come into like an established team and you find those people and like I kind of err on, cool, can I reframe this perspective? And I feel like sometimes a lot of management and leadership is just like reframing a sales rep's thinking, helping them like just like look at things differently, just all the time. And some people are like I've had someone, reps come to me and it's almost like an I'm out. We have a chat and they're like, oh, I'm so in. But, you do have those reps as well where like you try that. They're not really open. It's like, all right, cool. Yeah. Like, I'm not really sure how to help from here.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's pretty cool. Andy kind of piloted to the next, just another point. At what stage, as you're, looking at performance, everything else, at what stage do you go, it's just the leads are just not good? And it's, that's the main reason for the, for the lack of performance. Because, like as that happens, everyone's confidence kind of drops. And, you do things, you create activities to be able to do that. But at what point do you go, just marketing freaking sucks? Like, where do you guys kind of draw the line there with?
Data, for sure. Like Adam said, is it an individual or like a team thing? And often, like, look, maybe there's a better approach, but what I found a lot of times when I first get into an account, the best way for me to get feedback is just to take calls myself. I know my skill level. I know what I'm capable of. If I take 10 to 20 calls, I feel pretty confident that I can provide like, objective feedback on, what I'm actually seeing. More quickly than say, looking at the reps data, call reviews and things like that. And then like, looking at it over, having a reasonable data set and looking at it over like a period of time. I mean, they're just some of the things that I kind of do before I go to a business owner and I'm kind of like, hey, like, here's all the evidence, here's all the data, like, here's like my recommendation to make sure that it is this is what it is, not this is what I feel like it is conversation.
Yeah, I got raised in sales to never blame the leads, right? Like, never talk shit about leads at all. So when you're cold calling, you can't blame the leads because they don't know who you are, right? Like, it's like, okay, cool. Can't blame the phone book, I guess. With it, like, why aren't people taking my calls when they don't know you? So I grew up in sales in that sort of environment. So when we would get a lead, whether it's hot, cold, or whatever it is, we just never complain about it. It was always on us. And I know it wore a lot of people out really, really fast. Like it was the quickest way to have turnover. So when I say I've interviewed, hired, and fired thousands of people, like it would be literally in the thousands that I've done over, 15 years or whatever it is. So yeah, it's always interesting when you go, okay, so, but at some point in time, especially in the online space, there is a stage where there's not much else that a salesperson can do with the leads that they're given, right?
I feel like it's important to kind of like for state management, for the reps, like, encouraging them not to like blame leads and being mindful of the language I use when I'm providing them, maybe like with some feedback or, hey, here's what I've noticed and here's what we're working on, purely for kind of like state management. It can be a real disease if, it blaming leads like slips in, and, you got to fix that. However, with the business owner or in management conversations, like I can be, it's safe to be kind of like open and transparent on that front. So I try to kind of limit, I'm very mindful of the language I use with the reps and also the language that they're using, just because it's not in their best interest to blame the leads. But I also take the stance of, like lead quality and marketing, like it is a thing. I'm just really like mindful of that, I suppose.
If there's good communication between sales and marketing, there should ideally only ever be one variable being changed and tested at a time. And so it should be very easy to, if there is a change in lead quality and it's demonstrable team-wide, it should be easy to source back to this one variable that we changed and tested. Example, on the team that I was managing last year, there was one change in the application question, which backfired badly. And so we gave it 1 week, trying to hold frame. Okay, what can we do? What do we need to change? Like with the sales team, keeping that frame of let's take responsibility, let's control what we can control. Let's not. Week 2, all right, guys, we fucked up. Let's change back. It's fine. It's gone.
I think that
I'd bet my left arm it was the financial qualification question.
I would bet my wallet.
We went surname and then first name. That was switch.
Yeah, that's funny.
Financial
I
qualification.
think that's solid.
Very good.
Yeah, I think that's solid. The other thing too, also with the platforms, I've noticed on some offers is like sometimes just the algorithm, you just hit a rough batch like for a couple of weeks too. That's also a thing, even though you don't change anything too. So I think it's like, I don't think I need to go like Laura mentioned and take calls to be able to see it. But I think just like the data team versus like performers, things like individual, but also it's like take calls from a couple different people and look at them and like actually see, okay, like the outcome at the end, right? Well, actually I'm on social security and X, Y, and Z. And he's like, you can see that, but also look at, there's intent and there's also financial qualifications, like those kind of things. And you can see like, okay, the leads are way colder. They have no idea who we are, or like, just like looking at those things. Typically the beginning of the call and the end will be good indication of marketing, like intent and warmth. And then in the end, like what are the objections? Personally, I found out. And then also it's like, like for me, I have one team where I have like a rep that's like she's a stud and she's like a perfect like unicorn closer for this offers because of her profile and her background and everything. So like if I had to question lead quality and stuff, I would like pull out 10 of her calls and just listen to it. I know, okay, is she fucking up or is it like the lead? So I would know, right? Just because of the person too. So I think that would be my framework.
If I can add one thing to this that I feel like is a bit interesting. Over time, I've kind of developed what's the word? Like a structured way of viewing my relationship with the closers in terms of the marketing specifically, and the rest of the business too. I want closers who their first thought when their close rate goes down, or when they're not closing as much as they'd like, or just whatever ends up happening on their end, I want them to look at themselves first. Right? I want them to say, what am I doing differently? Right? If me as a closer, what am I doing differently? What did I do that changed? Like introspective first. And then my job as the manager is to be extrospective. What would be the word? I don't know. The opposite. I look at everything else first and save the closers for last. I'm looking at what happened with marketing? What did we change in campaigns? Like, what did we change in the funnels, the questions, like whatever it may be, everything but the closers. And once I rule that out, then maybe I'll go to the closer and be like, okay, let's figure this out. Everything else is the same. So we know that it's you. Like with all the love in the world, let's figure out what changed so that we can get you back on track. And that's where we can go to, the QC tracker and different things like that. But I like that relationship, and it works really well for me. It's almost like me protecting the closers in a sense, by being the barrier between them and the rest of the business of what's going on. And then the closers, in tandem with that, can then not have to worry about the rest of the business in any way, shape, or form. They're never complaining about the leads. They're never complaining about this or that happening with that. They're only focused on themselves and their own performance, which
just that biggest hiring filter of self-responsibility.
Yeah,
exactly.
That's just my first and last check mark.
Yeah, awesome.
I was going to say, people wrote in and are asking these questions, and it's somebody with less experience, and they want to know from their own perspective, how do I know if it's me or the leads? Then I would tell you should be tracking all of your data. And if all of a sudden the show up rate has dropped significantly and you're doing nothing different, you're still doing the reach outs, the confirmations, everything you've done before. If all of a sudden the no fit rate, the not qualified, no offer rate has risen significantly, then you're doing the same thing you were before, and people aren't showing up, and people aren't, getting an offer because they're not qualified. You know that it's the lead and it's not you. If those numbers stay consistent and it's your close rate that has dipped or your dollar per lead, it's you and not the leads, because everything else has stayed the same. So if people are looking for advice as how do I know it's me and what do I say to my manager? I mean, you take ownership, and then if you have data to substantiate, like, hey, I think there could be another problem with the leads I'm getting, bring the data. I mean, I'm tracking it anyways, but bring me what you got.
Just to add on that, I would say that's good, but compare your data to your past data, but also to the team's data as well, because again, closers can't say, hey, I'm doing everything the same. You listen to call and literally everything is different, because they're like in a rut. Their mindset is shit now towards the leads. They're a little bit burnt out. Maybe just need a couple of days off, and they're DQing people early because they're lazy as well. So that's just the other side. I agree 100%. But for me, what I used to do is like, I'd run it against a team. And then when I feel like there's something like that, and I'm like, I haven't changed anything. What happened? I'm looking at the data of the other reps, and I'm talking with the other reps. So I'm like, hey, this is what I'm noticing. I'm just seeing if it's just me or if it's like other people. I would check with other people I know on the team that are a certain level and that they're also taking ownership, just to see if it's a me thing or not. Like, for example, like my leads, I was super tight in my confirmation process. I'm like, hey, I don't know why, but my leads are not responding. Like right now, it's like the past few days have been really rough to even get an answer. Is it just me or anyone else in the team? Or like those kind of things, or ask a few people too. So I would just compare always to the team, because that's the only that's real way to do it.
Yeah.
It's a constant. Yeah, you're right, Jacob. Compare your numbers to the most constant, which is going to be your averages and the team's averages over time.
Exactly. Yeah.